Okay, so thank you, Stephen Zunis. All right. Okay, our next speaker is David Spero from JVP Action. And he grew up as a Reformed Jew and has been a lifelong peace and environmental activist. He joined Jewish Voice for Peace in 2014 during a previous assault on Gaza and has been active in JVP ever since. He lives in San Francisco and writes extensively about economics, ecology, and peace. And for 2 months, he's been writing about the Gaza catastrophe on medium.com and his Substack, Make Earth Sacred Again. He was heavily involved in getting the California Green Party on the ballot back in the early 90s and edited the newspaper Green Consensus for a couple of years. So welcome, David Spero.
Things have changed. This has been a hard talk to even prepare for. I've been pretty much obsessed with this issue for 3 months. I have friends in Gaza and in the West Bank and in Israel. And people are all traumatized. And I get stories from them. I get reports. I was working on the talk last night, and I got a Facebook Messenger call from in southern Gaza. And it was from a friend of mine named Sama, who I've set up a GoFundMe for about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And so we've been in touch ever since. But since the attack started, she hasn't been able to get online very much. People's internet connection and their power and their devices keeps running out. So she called me like midnight last night to say that the little room that she and her 3 children and her husband had been living in had been smashed up, and they are now living in a tent. They were cold and they were hungry, and could I send her some money? There's money from the GoFundMe. And so I did. Hopefully she'll get it. It doesn't work as well as it used to. But she sent this message, and I wanted to read it to you. I don't usually do this in a talk, but I may not be able to. Okay, after 84 days of the war on the Gaza Strip, the war of displacement of the population of Gaza and the theft of their homes and shops by the occupation army, we are still alive, but without food, without water, without shelter. She said, we moved from one house to another, from one school to another, from street to street, trying to preserve our children's lives. They are suffering all the woes of this war. The world is preparing, this was a week ago, the world is preparing for New Year's celebrations, and we await our turn in death. More than 30,000 have been killed so far, and 70% of Gaza's families have lost their homes. And then she asks, because it's GoFundMe, she asks for donations to buy them food, drink, and blankets, and medicine, and repair what can be repaired. I pray that the war will stop soon. I only get internet for a few minutes every couple of days, so I don't know when the next time I'll be able to open it again. Please excuse me for disturbing you. So I get messages like that. It's hard to, it's very painful. It's really it's almost traumatic, really, reading these messages from people who are just young mothers, who have done nothing to anybody, and they're suffering like this, and very likely are going to die if we can't stop this. But I'm going to try to tell you that I've been, like I said, I've been obsessed with this. I've been writing about it for the last 9 weeks or more on Medium and on Substack. And I hope some of you will look at some of those. And I'm going to talk about some of the stories that I've written. But I'll tell you a little bit about, I came up in Western New York, Reformed Jewish, left liberal parents who liked Israel, but they weren't gung-ho about it. They never talked about moving there, which a lot of their friends actually did move there. but they never talked about it. But as kids, we collected money to plant trees in Israel, and we didn't realize those trees were being planted to disguise Palestinian villages that had been razed. We just thought we were planting trees. We learned about the kibbutzim that, like Dr. Zunes mentioned, and never, but never learned about where the land came from. And we never heard a thing about Palestinians. I don't remember hearing the word Palestine or Palestinians as a kid. It was always, they talk about Arabs, and the Arabs are these bad people who want to kill the Jews. And that's all we heard. But as a teenager, Vietnam came, and I started to become more politically involved in things like peace and ecology and health. It was nice to be back here. I feel like it's coming back. I used to be here a lot. The Green Party office was right across the street and about a block down when we were organizing to get the party on the ballot. So I was there, but not for a long time. And then in 2014, invasion of Gaza and bombing of Gaza, I got involved in Jewish Voice for Peace. I said, I had known about this issue for 40 years, but not gotten particularly involved in it. Okay. And then the war in Gaza at that time, which killed 2,000 people, not as bad as what's going on now, but it was a big thing. So I got involved with JVP and have been doing that ever since. And I made friends in Gaza because of that. I was tutoring people. I tutored some young Palestinian writers to write in English so that they could tell their stories to English reading audiences. And then people started finding me on Facebook. And after I set up this GoFundMe for one of them, a bunch of people came. So I've been involved in this issue, and I've been doing everything that JVP does, going to demonstrations, supporting ceasefire resolutions, wearing ceasefire shirts, things like that, ever since. And I've been writing about it. And I'm just going to briefly summarize a couple of the articles that I've written, because that might be other ways of looking at it. And the one was called "This is Another American Genocide," which Stephen Zunes was kind of on about that, but this is not just Israel's war. This is the U.S. and Israel. I mean, Israel would not be doing it if the U.S. didn't okay it, and they couldn't. I mean, when United States officials like Blinken and is that his name? Blinken and Biden say, we are cautioning Israel to use caution and everything, while sending them these massive bombs. I mean, it's insane. It's gaslighting. I mean, how can you expect us to take this seriously? Here are bombs to blow people up, but don't, be careful how you use them. So we think in U.S. and Israel are joined at the hip by the military-industrial complex, and that's important to realize. That is, Israel's wars and the wars that Israel kind of promotes for the United States are trillion-dollar income generators for the military corporations. And the neoconservatives, who were the people that, kind of got the U.S. on this full-blown dominate the world, unipolar world policy, are a mix of military-industrial corporation executives and Zionist Jews from the University of Chicago. And now it's spread. Now neoconservatives are everywhere in the U.S. government, but that connection has never ended, never stopped. What was the senator's name? Scoop Jackson from Washington, who was called the senator from Boeing, who is not Jewish, and he was a original major sponsor of the neoconservatives. So that's going on, and that's why JVP we don't take a position on Israeli politics. We're not for one state solution or a two-state solution or any number of states. We don't think that's our really business to decide, but we are all about stopping U.S. military aid to Israel and stopping political support too. But so that's one thing. This is America's war. Another article was about why Israel promotes anti-Semitism. And it's true that, and we probably all know the way they use accusations of anti-Semitism to shut down any criticism of Israel or any support for Palestine or anybody, for ceasefire is anti-Semitic in their way. I mean, but it's more than that because they want the people who founded Israel would like it when things are very uncomfortable for Jews out in the other world, because that will drive people to either move to Israel or donate to Israel or politically support Israel. And they set themselves up. We are the only safe place for Jews in the world, which Biden said just 2 weeks ago, that if there was no Israel, there would not be a Jew who was safe in the world. And this is like the chief executive of the most powerful country in the world saying he can't protect us. I mean, so that sort of thing is going on, and it drives politics way to the right. I mean, with these accusations of anti-Semitism, they got rid of Jeremy Corbyn, they got rid of Cynthia McKinney, and they've gotten rid of others or suppressed others. Yeah, Dennis Kucinich, yeah. And this is not good for anybody who believes in labor or in any progressive cause or in peace. Lately, we at JVP, we've been confronting the Jewish Community Relations Council, which is a major, actually liberal organization. On every other issue in the world, they're pretty progressive. But on this issue, they've been showing up at city council meetings and other meetings to say that when people are considering a ceasefire resolution, like is going to happen in San Francisco Monday, that they're being anti-Semitic, or that people chanting Free Palestine are saying kill the Jews. And that kind of thing is just all over the place now. It's like this relentless gaslighting that they do and lying. And I was watching Glenn Greenwald on the way over here, and he was talking about how he keeps hearing how there are these crowds of students rampaging around campuses saying kill the Jews or gas the Jews. And he will say, give me one example, one actual quote or one video. Nobody can do it, but they still believe it. And when I write an article, I get a lot of criticism, obviously, from pro-Israel readers, and saying things like, well, what about Hamas cutting off those babies' heads? Or what about this mass rape? And all these charges that they throw out there. And Israel had a long reliance on false flags and made up stories, and they're still doing it. I don't know if I didn't mention that it's important to remember, and we know, I'm sure, but not everybody knows, that this is not a religious fight. This is not Jews versus Muslims. This is about money. This is about land. It's about oil. It's about geopolitical power. It's not about the religion, which actually those two religions are really similar, Judaism and Islam. So that was my key point. That basically, that another thing to remember is that Jews are a traumatized people. I mean, we've been repeatedly attacked and victimized and uprooted. So it's where people are very easily provoked by fear-based propaganda. And some of them act out that trauma in violent ways. And in general, I think that Jews who move to Israel tend to be more traumatized than Jews are in America, because they're in a traumatic situation. I mean, they're committing a lot of the violence, but there's violence going both ways, and even traumatizing others is traumatic for you, which has been shown by many studies of police officers. They're all traumatized by what they do. So that's happening. And the one other article that I wrote about that theme, and that got me in the most trouble, probably will get me in trouble here. It was called Zionism, How Zionists Became the New Nazis, which is a pretty strong statement. I realize it was a really strong statement, but I was wondering, where does this ideology come from? And so I read Mein Kampf, and the parallels are really striking. This combination of feeling victimized and feeling threatened and feeling superior at the same time. And it leads to being militaristic. We have to be violent, we have to fight, we have to kill, and the endless land grabs, which Hitler was all about. We need more land, and demonizing an outside force, an outside group. And this process is not limited to Israel or Germany. It was, you can say the same thing about the United States. I mean, we are a settler colony, and pretty much all settler colonies go through that process, turning more and more violently against those they dispossess. The original Zionists that came to Israel were not planning to kill all the Arabs. That was not their plan. They wanted to drive some away and take over the land, and then everybody would get along more or less. But it didn't work because people aren't going to just let you take their land and fade away. And so you dehumanize them, and they're dehumanizing the Palestinians the same way Hitler dehumanized the Jews. I mean, it's not like in the United States where basically we were able to push all the native people so far out of the way that we don't really have to worry about them anymore, but they can't do that there. So over the years, Israel's moved more and more to open fascism, especially because of Americans moving there and Russians, people who became settlers and were actively involved in physically dispossessing people. So the much closer contact, not like the contact that we have with Native Americans, it's like right up in your face contact that they're having. And those people have now moved into government, and the government has gone way far to the right. And they lie about everything. And the last thing I really want to say is that people believe those lies, and it makes it really hard to have a conversation. People will accuse you, if you have more sources than they do, the sources mainly being the New York Times and the IDF. If you have other sources, they say, well, you're just ignorant. You don't know what's really going on. To talk about JVP, I really need to talk about Jewish Voice for Peace. Jewish Voice for Peace started in Oakland. Did you know that? It's like so many other good things in America. It started in Oakland in, I think, 92. And it's now a national organization. I think it's still the fastest growing Jewish organization in America. We've been very busy. It's not the most left among Jewish groups, among Jewish anti-Zionist groups. We're not the most left group. There are many others. But we are promoting ceasefire resolutions in city councils. We're lobbying people. We're going to demonstrations. Shut down Grand Central Station. Shut down the state building in Sacramento and the Alameda County Council in Oakland. Was that? Yeah. It's a 501c3, JVP is, so we can't endorse political candidates, but there is this C4 JVP Action, which I'm a member of, which can endorse candidates. So we might support Laura or, somebody from Peace and Freedom or Greens next time. We're supporting Rashida Tlaib in Michigan. And that's it. I hope everybody will get involved. I know you're all involved, but this to me is the biggest issue that's going on, biggest issue of our lifetime.